What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin, riding solo for this one as Jimmy is out of the country. So safe travels to my guy, Jimmy Haskell. But the reason we are here is, of course, to talk about the big news that kind of shocked the NFL world. I'm certain it didn't really shock those close to the Seahawks organization or the fans that pay close attention. But the staple, the centerpiece of their defense, Bobby Wagner, has been released by the Seattle Seahawks. Excuse me. And man, I mean, you're talking about a guy who spent 10 years holding down the middle of a very, very successful franchise. You got a guy who, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-time Pro Bowler. I mean, the guy has really pretty much done it all. He's also a defensive rookie of the year. I mean, the guy has really done everything you can do. Super Bowl champion, and was the center of one of the most fearsome defenses in the history of the league. So, of course, when you're a Ravens fan, that spurs the question, well, why aren't the Ravens going after Mr. Bobby Wagner? Because I don't care if you're a fan of the whoever's, you know exactly who Bobby Wagner is, and you know the type of talent that guy has. I mean, that there's just no doubt, that this guy is an extremely talented player. He's a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the great linebackers, if not the best of his generation. So this is a guy who's got a ton of talent and a ton of experience at this point. And when you look at, the Ravens a couple years ago invested highly in a draft pick for Patrick Queen. They took him. He's still a young man. He's only 22 years old, but definitely saw a bit of a dip in his performance. I think he'll even be the first to admit that. He's a guy that has had some real big successes, some flashes of greatness, but he's also had some times where kind of leaves you shaking your head. Some tackling issues, some assignment issues, and sometimes that speed and athleticism that he has just isn't able to be put on display because he finds himself in the wrong position, or he's arm tackling, or just not living up to the athleticism, the first round draft pick, and of course the hype that comes along with playing middle linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens when you're following the footsteps of a guy like Ray Lewis, who casts a huge shadow over anyone who would fill his spot there at the middle linebacker spot. So the question is, are the Ravens looking at Bobby Wagner and potentially looking to bring him in to see, what kind of help he can provide? So first thing I wanted to say is the reason Bobby Wagner was released is, of course, because he's, he'll be 32 this summer. So he's not getting any younger. He is getting a little long in the tooth, especially at a position where, you take a ton of beating. I mean, it's hard to find a position in which you take more of a beating than the middle linebacker spot when you're consistently taking on offensive linemen, trying to shed those, only to encounter a running back running full speed at you with bad intentions. So it's a position that certainly takes a toll on your body. And he is going to be 32 before the season starts. And then another big reason, the biggest of all the reasons, is of course the $16.6 million cap savings that they're getting from releasing Bobby Wagner. I mean, that's a massive savings towards the cap. And of course, this looks like a complete reset for the Seattle Seahawks as they also trade away Russell Wilson. And looks like they're kind of just starting to get the young movement and trying to get younger at every position. And these are probably their two highest paid, and they're two of their older guys. So it makes a lot of sense why the Seahawks did it. I know it wasn't an easy move for the Seahawks to get rid of a guy like Bobby Wagner, who I'm sure 5-6 years ago they probably thought he would retire a Seahawk, and I think Bobby probably thought that even more recently than that. So it's a tough move, but that's also why, and the reason I bring that up is another reason why it's going to be a bit of a challenge for the Ravens. But what they would get for him if they decide to bring in Bobby Wagner, and we'll get into what that could cost in a second. What they're getting is a guy who almost never misses games. the guy is a consummate professional. He's a tackling machine. This guy has never had less than 100 tackles combined in a single season. He's never had less than that. His lowest was 104, and that was when he only played in 11 of the 16 total games. That was back in 2014. This past season, while he was 31 for the entire season, he had his highest tackle total since he's been a pro. He had 170 total tackles. 170. Second team All-Pro, Pro Bowler. I mean, played in 16 games. I mean, this guy, he had an interception. Let's see, he's had 5 pass breakups. He had a sack. I mean, this is a guy who got it done in pretty much every area that you would ask a middle linebacker to do it. The guy was successful and has always been successful no matter what you asked him to do. This isn't we can get him in there on the rundowns, but we got to get him off the field in coverage, or even the opposite, where, we like his athleticism running with the tight ends, but man, he just doesn't come up and play the run like a middle linebacker. This guy can do it all. He does both at a high level, and of course would look excellent in the purple and black, even at 32 years of age. But the question is, what type of money is he going to be wanting? Because this is a guy who's been paid very highly throughout his career, and rightfully so, because he's been extremely successful. But the Ravens currently have about $15.5 million, roughly, about $15.6, $15.7 million in cap space after the moves that they did today. So, man, I mean, is it an upgrade? No doubt about it. I mean, he almost had as many solo tackles as Pat Queen had combined tackles. Bobby had 93 solo. Pat Queen had 98 total, only 68 solo. So again, he had 72 more total tackles than Pat Queen. So there's no doubt that it's an upgrade. Absolutely no doubt. And even when Pat Queen was asked to move over and we brought Josh Bynes in, as much as we love and appreciate what Josh Bynes has done stabilizing the middle of our defense, he's a massive improvement from Josh Bynes as well. I mean, there's not a ton of teams where you could look around and say he's not a big improvement for. I mean, there's really only a very small select group. So he would be an obvious and complete and total upgrade. The question really is, how much does he want to play for? Because this is maybe the last big, contract he could hit. This could be a situation where after this deal, he's only on 1-year deals, or those 2-3-year deals that are really only 1 and only 2 and 3 because of cap purposes to spread the impact of the salary over a multi-year period. But really, it's just a 1-year deal masked as a 2 or 3-year deal, which we see a ton around the league. But this is his last opportunity to maybe ink a 3 or 4-year deal that isn't one of those 1-year deal masked as a multi-year deal. This is his big opportunity to make as much money as he can before he exits and stops his playing career, which is really, the idea that every player should have is, let me maximize my value in the short period of time that I have to play this game. So when I look at the 15.7 million, 15.6 million we have in cap space, and I look at all the holes we have on this roster, I just think as much as an improvement and an upgrade Bobby Wagner would be, is it worth pretty much spending nearly all of your money on just one position? I mean, on upgrading a position in which you've already invested a ton of money, not a ton of money, a ton of assets too, when you drafted Pat Queen with your number 1 pick, a couple years ago. But just so everyone knows the cap implications, last season, Bobby Wagner counted 17.1 against the cap. The year before, 14.7. The year before that, 15.8, then 13.6. So this, no matter how it is, it's not going to be an inexpensive venture. At the very, I think the best case scenario, the Ravens could, maybe make this a single-digit cap hit by spreading his signing bonus over a couple years. But either way, this isn't going to be an inexpensive guy to add, and it shouldn't be, because he deserves to be paid very highly. So while I would love to see Bobby Wagner as the centerpiece of the defense, at least in 2022, and I'd be perfectly happy if he was there the following year as well, I don't really see an avenue where it makes a ton of sense from a cap standpoint. and I'm sure Bobby wants to, go to a team just like the Ravens, a team that's looking to compete, a team that, has a young stud of a quarterback, a team that has a defense that's just, got a bunch of tradition in the history. So I think this would be a perfect fit for Bobby Wagner if the Ravens had a little bit more cap space. And so, man, while I would love to see it, I just don't see it happening. Now, the good news is that's not the only option out there, and I think there's some really good options that are still going to be available who've made big impacts on their teams this past year. And the biggest one to me, just to throw a name out there of a guy, since I'm sure you're probably curious, the guy I would want to target, and this might be a guy who is now looking to hit a monster payday, but we don't know yet. The valuations aren't as high as what Bobby Wagner, and that's Devondre Campbell. He's a guy who went and played for the Packers after, he got drafted by the Falcons, spent a year in Arizona, but then went to Green Bay and absolutely flourished. He had 146 total tackles, with 102 of those being solo. Also had 2 interceptions, had 2 sacks, had 5 pass breakups. He played in 16 games. And really has been a consistent. He's been a healthy option pretty much his entire career, outside of some games he misses as a young man. But that is the guy I would go after. He's 3 years younger. He's a lot cheaper, at least to this point in his career. Now, look, he could be looking to turn this career year into that monster payday. But either way, I got to believe that even with the fact that he's 3 years younger, I got to believe that he would be the cheaper option of the two. Now, I know a lot of Ravens fans are going to be disappointed and say, why don't we have more cap space? Well, there's no doubt that there were some bad contracts that, some of it's just pure bad luck. I mean, I think when they signed Ronnie Stanley, he was coming off of an all-pro season. They didn't anticipate that he would, do the damage to his leg that he did just a week or 2 later, and that problem would still be lingering all the way, possibly into the 2022 season. But that's just one contract that kind of made the Ravens a little bit more hamstrung in what they can do. And this is a team in the Ravens that always spend to the most that they can, and that leads to them having more limited cap space than a lot of those teams that tank, don't spend to their maximum potential, and then they can carry over cap space from the previous year, and that's how you see these $50-60 million cap space numbers from certain teams around the league, and you'll never see that from the Baltimore Ravens. Never, ever will you see the Ravens with $60 million in cap space heading into a season. It's just because they're just never going to tank like some of these teams will do. So I would love to see Bobby in purple and black, but I just don't see it happening. But I would also like to see Devondre Campbell, and I think that one's a little bit more realistic, while still probably a long shot, because I don't think they're ready to give up on what Pat Queen can do in the future, because he is so young. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Bobby Wagner would be worth that type of investment? Do you think that, yeah, it's going to be expensive, but hey, him in the middle of our defense would solve a lot of problems, cover up a lot of holes, and he's worth that potentially massive financial investment that the Ravens would have to make in order to bring him over here? Or do you think, you know what, he's a great player, but just don't have the space to fit him under the cap? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And also, does this mean that the Ravens might address that position in the draft? I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, there's a lot more holes, but hey, if they don't buy into Pat Queen and what he's going to be doing moving forward, then why not find a guy who you do believe in? And that doesn't have to be at the top end of the draft. That could certainly be to the middle or late rounds as well. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below.